You may come across a situation where you're going to have to group clusters of notes together correctly. If you see something like this, and you see something like this, the way to group those correctly is, first of all, you're going to ask yourself, how many beats are in the bar? In this case, look at the time signature, there are 4 beats in the bar. So you identify the value of each note and you group them correctly like the following. So you divide this bar into 4 beats because this top number in the time signature tells you that there are 4 beats in the bar. So now we have 2/8. What we would do there is we can fit 2/8 into 1 beat, so we would group those together like this. That's a quarter note, that's a quarter note rest. We've got 2/8 here in the final beat, so you can group those, you can tie them together like that. In shorthand, when people were, that's just like you're writing attached writing. People have been writing very fast like this. That's why people started grouping. So, how would you group notes correctly using different time signatures? The most common time signatures you will experience in this course certainly are 4/4 time, 3/4 time, 6/8 time. There's your treble clef, key signature. The treble clef and key signature in this case is not relevant. What is relevant to be able to do something like this correctly is a time signature. A time signature tells you, for example, 3/4 means you can fit 3/4 notes into 1 bar, like this. 6/8 time means you can fit 6/8 notes into 1 bar. 4/4 time means you can fit 4 quarter notes. Okay. If you saw a load of 8s in 1 bar with a time signature 4/4 time, first of all, split up the bar correctly according to the number of beats that are permitted in the bar. That number tells you that there are 4 beats in a bar. If I can fill this bar with 8/8 notes, there's 2, there are 2, there are another 2, and another 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8/8 notes. I can fill this bar that has a time signature 3/4 with 6/8 notes. Why? Because we have 3 quarter note beats, 3 beats, like this. That number tells you 3 beats are permitted in 1 bar. 3 quarter notes. The bottom number will always tell you the type of note that you can fit into each beat. I showed you before 3 quarter notes. Now 1 quarter note is equal to 2/8. That's why you can fit 6 multiplied by 8 notes, 6/8 into a bar that has a time signature 3/4. In 6/8 time, it tells you that you can fit 6/8. You notice the same amount of 8s as a bar that has a time signature of 3/4. But this is all about grouping notes correctly. Now I'm just using eighths as an example. So, very important rule here, when you see a bar with a time signature of 6/8 time, the rule is that you split the bar into 2 beats, not 8 beats. You're just going to have to know that rule. That rule will be relevant to how you group eighth notes in a bar that has 6/8 time, and you will group them differently than the 6/8 notes that has a time signature of 3/4. Let's explain. So, you can only group within a beat. You can't group across beats. So, in 3/4 time, you can group those 2 eighth notes together like that, tie them together, like the 2 flags of two flag poles, you tie the 2 flags together. We're grouping within the beat still. We're going to beat 2, so we will group those 2 eighth notes together correctly. Group the following notes correctly. Now we will group the 2 eighth notes in beat 3 together. So we said that you only group within beats. So in 6/8 time, even though that also has 6/8 notes, same as a bar with 3/4 time, we said we can only group within beats, and in 6/8 time we only have 2 beats. Therefore in 6/8 time we group eighths in 3s, clusters of 3s. All of these rules, what are they for? In reality, what this would sound is this would sound like it's a different feel. That's what you're doing here. So we go to 4/4 time. Again, we group within beats, never across beats. Therefore, we can group 2 eighth notes together. We tie their flags together. In beat 2, we'll tie their 2 flags together. In beat 3, we'll tie their 2 flags together. And in beat 4, we'll tie theirs together. So that's they create different fields. Now, that's the basics of how you group within beats according to the time signature. So we will get mixtures of notes. You won't always get lovely handy eighth notes like that. You might, for example, in 3/4 time, in one bar, you might be asked to group the following correctly. That's an eighth note. This is an eighth rest. This would be a quarter note. And 2 eighth notes. So you have to identify what you can group and what you can't group. You have to identify what you can group and what you can't group. So I would look at this and I would say to myself, okay, time signature of 3/4, therefore I will divide my bar into 3 beats, and I'm dividing them in the places that I'm allowed to divide the bar into. An eighth plus an eighth note rest will cover a beat. There's a quarter note covering beat 2 and 2 eighth notes covering beat 3. So I look at beat 1 and I say, can I group these? No, you cannot group a rest to a sound, a note. I can't group the quarter to anything, but I can group these 2 eighths together. So in this example bar I've created, I can group those two together. And that's the only two I can group together. So watch out for rests. I could have something like this. Group the following correctly 3, 4 times again. Divide the bar. Always get into a habit of dividing up the bar according to the amount of beats that the top number is telling you. If I had something like this, the 2 1/8 note rests, quarter note, an 1/8 note, and 2 16ths. What would I do there? Well, first of all, I say that this is odd. What? 2 1/8 note rests? I don't need that. I can cross that out. And I will write the correct version here on this stave. You will be given a blank stave underneath notes that you see on a stave above. So I would again create the 3 beats. I would turn my 2 1/8 note rests into 1 quarter note rest. That gets rid of that. You'll never see 2 1/8 notes. Pay careful attention to that, folks. You may well see something like that. I don't need to group that to anything. It's quarter note in its own right. It fills up beat 2. But this is a strange one. I can actually group all of those 3 together. 1/8 to 2 16ths. And how do I do it? I will write 3 note heads like this, and that's how you do it. Because when you think about it, there's 2 flags on this stem, 2 flags on this stem, they're being tied together like that, and then I'm tying this flag across here to this stem, which is that flag. Make sense? I'd like you to write that example, please, in your own time after this video. Okay. What about 6/8 time? Remember I said that you group into 2 beats. Six-eight time means that you divide the bar into 2 beats. 6/8 time, not 8 beats. So you might get something like this. Again. And so I said to myself, can I group anything here? Well, I can group beat 1. And what I would do to group beat 1 is I would tie its flag to that stem, and I would tie these 2 flags together like that. So that gives me, like we did in the previous example, and 2 beats again in 6/8 time. Close the bar. We cannot group a quarter note rest to an 1/8. That there, by the way, is the equivalent of 2 1/8 note rests, and an 1/8 there, which fills up. That's how you group notes correctly. Now, with just one last example, in 4/4 time, also known as common time, because you'll hear it most commonly. So, as always, divide your bar into the number of beats indicated by the top number. I always very lightly with a pencil, very lightly do this to guide myself in situations like this. So you might have something like that. You might have something like this. And something like that. And something like so what's going on? Well, an eighth note rest, quarter note, eighth note, 8, 16, 16, eighth note rest. So what can we group? We will group correctly on this stave here. Write out what you see there. Again, you have to, or else what you write here won't mean anything. Make sure you repeat exactly what's written in the top stave. So again, the new stave I will divide into my beats. You cannot group an eighth note to an eighth note rest. This quarter note you can't group with anything. Remember, you can only group within beats in your garden. You can't group across your neighbour's fence. We've got 2 eighth notes. I will leave these, by the way, like I said, the way they are, because you can't group them. Stem coming down the left because note head is above middle line. So now I can group these two together. Yeah. Those 2 flags we can tie together. And these, this is an eighth note rest. You can't group that to anything, but you can tie these 2 flags, sets of 2 flags together like that. So I will put a line there, and that's how you will group correctly. 2 eighth notes can fit in a beat. There's of a bar that has a time signature 4/4. 2 eighth notes. 2 eighth notes is equivalent to 1 quarter note. 2 eighth notes there. 1 eighth note is the equivalent to 2 sixteenths and an eighth note rest. So that's essentially 2 eighth notes. That's an eighth, and that's an eighth note rest. Get to know your symbols.